Hi, and welcome to this week's Wu Wei Wisdom, a life lessons teaching. It's great to be back with you all. Now, do you truly immerse yourself in the present moment, or is your mind always racing ahead, thinking or worrying about the future, or perhaps stuck ruminating in the past? Well, in this teaching, we are going to teach you how to live more in the now and the enormous benefits of doing this. Okay, David, so living in the now, as a Taoist monk, you, I guess, know a lot about this and practice it. What does it mean?
Well, I think the word you've just used there, it's something we have to practice. Mm-hmm. So if a lot of my clients ask me, how do I know the voice of the inner child? When do I know the inner child is talking? Now, this is one instance when you know when the inner child is talking, when it's stuck on the past, what I call the what ifs, what should, what could have happened, wouldn't it be better if it had happened this way? Or whether it goes into the future, concerning about what's going to happen, It misses out the only thing that we have got control of is the present moment. And isn't this strange? Because one of the things about the inner child, it wants to be in control. It's striving to be future-proofed. It's striving to control things. Yet the only thing it can control is the present moment. It doesn't do that. It swings like a pendulum from the past as into the future, always looking for justifications or excuses, always trying to find worst case scenarios. And so if you're ever unsure about the inner child, the voice, how it sounds, when you're doing this or if you're doing this, this is the voice of the inner child.
So that inner child part of our mind is what you're saying is what stops us from living more in the now. So if we catch ourselves thinking about something in the future, it could be forward planning positively, or it could be worrying about the future or ruminating on past events. We know that is our inner child part of our mind drawing our attention away from the value and the benefit and our capabilities within the current.
And that's why it needs practice, because you have to define, because there's nothing wrong with planning the future. But if you plan the future just based on worst case scenarios, what's the worst thing that can happen? So I'm going to give you an instance that the inner child does. Isn't it better to think into the future and think of the worst case scenarios because I'll be better prepared? But what that does, it clouds the future. Then all you're doing is focusing on worst case scenarios. You're not focusing on best case scenarios. Have you ever thought about the future and think, well, this could work well, or there's a 50-50 chance? The inner child will always try and what it sees itself as protect itself and thinking of the worst case scenario. But then it's like setting your Google Maps on your phone to go to the worst place that you don't want to go.
So our motivation to want to protect ourselves, to make sure things are going to be all right in the future, is one of the reasons that we get drawn out of the present moment. But I think a lot of people would say, David, is living fully in the present moment, does that mean that I can't make plans, I can't have goals? How do we find like an authentic spiritual balance where we can really be present, really savor what's going on around us, really be mindful of what's going around us, and yet also have a trajectory of sorts that we also want to try and steer intentionally?
Well, you've asked two questions there, so let's think about the future. So the Taoist teaching is on the future is what they call yi, Y-I, yi. And that translates to intention, having a direction of travel, but not being fixed, not thinking that's rigid, not believing that everything has got to happen to your expectations, to what you want. And here's where you can identify the inner child again. The inner child wants what it wants, when it wants it. And unfortunately, the universe doesn't work to that rhythm. You can have a direction of travel, an intention, and move forward. In fact, in Taoism, this gets very close to the law of attraction. Yi Dao, Qi Dao. And you hear me say that on the meditations. Yi Dao, the way of your intention, the flow of your intention, the way you want to go, Qi Dao, your energy will follow that. So if your intention is always worst case scenarios, I've got to protect myself, then you're setting yourself up to go in that direction of worst case scenarios. So you should have a clear intention from a balance, from based in your spiritual nature, from your truth, honesty, and integrity, but also be prepared that it may not happen on your time scale.
Yeah.
So you may want something to happen. Next year, I'm going to get a promotion. It may not be next year, maybe this year, maybe the year after. But focus on getting the promotion. What does it mean to get the promotion? And that's the intention. And so living in the present, the other part of your question, to be honest, is gratitude. Aren't we so fortunate to be in the now? If you're of good health, good standing, just take a moment and breathe and be grateful. And we so often just take things for granted. Just getting up in the morning, just having our health. And I've gone through a period just recently of bad health and realizing just being able to walk, to eat, to talk, to just celebrating those very simple things. And we just take that for granted. We don't take any gratitude for being in the now, because we so often just projecting on the world that we think it should be.
Yeah, I think it's the inner child's tendency to want to be better, to want more, to strive, that will naturally draw our focus away from gratitude of in the moment to future planning. And you know, when you're talking about intention there, David, I like the idea of intention rather than detailed planning for all the reasons you've explained, because intention is looser, it's lighter, it's more flowing. But I'm also wondering, layered on top of that as a strategy, there needs to be almost like a set and forget. So insofar as you set your intention on whatever matter it is, whether it's your health, whether it's a family goal, whether it's a career goal, whether it's a financial goal, you set it mindfully, authentically, and then you refocus back on the current moment. Now, that might be refocusing back on the current moment in terms of what can I do right now in this moment as part of that longer term intention. But you don't stay always planning and looking and having your energy focused into the future. So you set the intention, then almost like leave it, forget it. Bring your energy and attention back to the present moment. Enjoy the present moment, work in the present moment, be creative in the present moment, aligned with those intentions. And then maybe at a set point in time, whether it's a month later, a week later, 3 months later, go back to the intention that you set and review, but then do a review and then a set and forget. And I would say it's maybe about mindfully recognizing the value of bringing ourselves back into the present moment.
Well, again, there's a couple of things you said there, which was very important. The last thing you said was mindfully. And this is where it goes wrong, because mostly we do not set an intention. So the Taoist thought, the translation of the Taoist thought of Yi, intention, is a direction of travel. So we don't normally set our intention from mindfulness, from our Shen spirit, from our truth and honesty. We set it from an emotion. Wouldn't we be happier if we had a relationship? Wouldn't things be better if I got a rise? Wouldn't things improve if this happened or that happened? And we set it from an emotional base rather than a mindful base.
Can I just be clear on that? Is what you're saying is if we have an emotional experience or an emotional feeling such as I feel lonely, I feel anxious, I feel in lack, what we're describing here is an uncomfortable physiological feeling. But from those feelings, then comes the motivation to strive, to future project, to also ruminate on the past. Where have I gone wrong? Rather than being more neutral, more present, having more gratitude for life lessons learned, often hard life lessons.
So what you're just describing, I would define that as the difference from being grounded, your core, either being in your emotions or being in what I call your Shen, your spirituality, your mindfulness. So if I'm going to use an example that you use, if you say, I feel lonely, therefore I need to find a partner and that will cure my loneliness, that will not work. Sustained. You have to say, I feel lonely. I would change that to, I am creating the loneliness feeling. Then I would do the golden thread and ask yourself, why am I creating this lonely feeling? What is it from me? Because your first grounding has to always be Shen, your mindfulness, whatever word you want to call it. And then you select and choose the yi, the direction of travel. And you must always remember, this is a very powerful Taoist teaching. The only thing we have is the journey. The destination is not going to magically, like a fairy godmother, step in and change your life, because we never reach the destination. We're on this journey of life, and all we've got is the journey, is this present moment. And if we, again, using your words, I wouldn't like to use these words, strive to get, when I get to the destination,
then everything will be
all right.
Then I can be happy.
Then I'll be happy. Then I won't be lonely. Then I'll have a wonderful partner. Then I'll make money. That destination will never arrive. So constantly, when I do this teaching, I always have this image. I don't know where it comes from. That donkey with a carrot dangling in front of it, always trying to grasp the carrot.
But David, isn't that very much the also encouraged by the society and the media systems that we live in right now? Society, social media encourages us to strive, to compare, to self-criticize, to self-judge ourselves, and to want more, rather than having that, as you say, acceptance, understanding, gratitude of what we already have. Our inner child, our ego, is magnetized, excited, drawn into this game of being better, having more, having a higher status, having a better partner, having more money, having a better house, having a better job, all the things.
Well, that's because we live in a community, a society that values, because we buy more, we sell more, and that's the society we live in. And so that's why, going back to where we started, you have to define the difference between the inner child, because the inner child will buy into that society, that if I get a new car, if I buy a new dress, if I just lose some weight, if I change my job, there's always that striving to grasp the carrot, and that means that we buy more, we want more, we're always striving. Now we live in this society, nothing wrong with this society, and it goes back to the word you use, but we have to be mindful. We can't be consumed by the society. We have something more that I would call your Shen spirituality. And your Shen spirituality, that inner wisdom, again, we're using words. You may want to call it your inner wisdom, your intuition, your inner knowing, your gut feeling. You know when something is right. And if you're constantly striving and always wanting and always thinking that you need something, then you've fallen into the trap. You've fallen into that trap. We live in this society, but we don't have to fall into the trap. We can navigate, again, this goes back to intention, we can navigate our way through this, being more connected to our truth, to our honesty. And the thing that makes this difficult, particularly for the inner child, emotions. The emotions come in, and going back again to your words, Alex, the emotions, oh, I'm lonely, oh, I'm anxious, oh, if only I had this, oh, I'd be much better if I lost some pounds, oh, I'd be better if I dropped the dress size, wouldn't that be happier? We fall into that, and we have to step back and ask ourselves, where is the basis of our intention? Where is that coming from? And that would be my teaching on being in the present moment. And I'll speak a moment how we do that. But being in the present moment is almost holding hands, connecting to that Shen, connecting yourself, even if it's for 5 minutes. And I often smile because my clients say, I haven't got time for this. I haven't got time to sit down quiet. Yet they've got time to worry about the past, which they can't change, or the future, which they can't control. They've got plenty of time to do that, but they haven't got time. And I always say, you hear me say in my meditations, 10, 15 minutes. You haven't got time for 10 to 15 minutes to connect yourself with your truth. You can spend hours ruminating. Wouldn't it be better if that didn't happen? Wouldn't it be better if I did this? Wouldn't it be better? You've got plenty of time for that. And so this is why connecting to your real, whatever you want to call it, I call it Shen, your intuition, your inner knowing, and spending some time in what you have got and what you can control. Not what you can't control, what you can control.
And so, David, that I'm kind of imagining this in terms of practical things we can do to be more in the now. What I've heard you say is that on a daily basis, and you can talk more about it, we can connect back to our authentic selves, our spirituality, our Shen, as a kind of a daily practice. And that then forms the foundation for us living out another busy day on planet Earth, getting on with the things that we need to get on with, but in a more mindful, in a more present way. And then there's almost like the maintenance to that initial reconnection, which I think from what you said is very much being aware of when we experience an emotional red light feeling, so an uncomfortable or painful emotional feeling, whether it's anxiety, whether it's loneliness, whether it's regret, whether it's longing or wanting, we need to tune into that and be mindful that, I'm not in the present moment, because is this emotion originating in thoughts which are focused on the future or thoughts which are focused on the past? Because chances are they will be.
Yeah, so one of the things there that you've just said is making that definition. Where is the root of this? Where is the core coming from? Where is that first thought? It can never be emotional, because if you agree, and this is why this is a foundational teaching of Wu Wei Wisdom, we do so many teachings on this. You are the creator of your emotions, not the victim. So we're not saying you shouldn't have emotions. I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying emotions are natural and normal. But emotions are always a consequence of a belief or a thought. So if you're basing decisions based on emotions, you're missing the first step. You're starting at step 2 instead of step 1. So the first chore task is to go back to step 1. What do I believe? What do I think? My mindfulness of this situation. So that's your first step. Again, we've done many videos on this. One of the things the inner child, that part of your psyche likes, is familiarity. So it's so used to working from the familiar emotions. You now have to retrain it.
Yeah.
It is a retraining. As you said right at the beginning, a practice, something I do every day, a practice that you have to go back and connecting to your Shen, to your original intuition, your gut feel. I'm using different words because you may not like Shen, but going back to that original thought, that has to be familiar. That has to be your starting point. You don't have to think about it. That is naturally what you do. You start from a belief. And is this belief true, honest, and has integrity?
Yeah. So when we catch ourselves experiencing a red light emotion at some point during the day, and then we stop and examine it and say, am I projecting into the future here? Am I ruminating on the past? What is the actual thought or belief that's going on here? If we find that it's very much an ego-led or an inner child thought, which is not authentic, which is not true, which is not honest, which lacks integrity, then we know we've disconnected from thoughts or beliefs which are associated with our Shen and our authenticity.
And you also know, I'm just going to stop you because you said something very important. You are now programming your Google Maps to go in a different direction.
Yeah.
You are not going into your true direction. You are not following your intention. You are wanting to go to London, and you've set your maps to go to Glasgow. If you want to go to New York, you've just set your maps to go to LA. You're setting the wrong intention because your starting point is your emotions rather than your authenticity.
So I would imagine if we do that cross-check and we find out this is motivated by a fear of the future or not letting go of past events, I'm definitely not living in the present. I'm not living in the now. My energy is not in the right place. If we can switch to the authentic version of that, so it might be, our authentic self would be more about acceptance of stuff that's happened in the past, self-compassion about stuff that's happened in the past. It would be more about knowing what we can't control in the future, knowing that the worst case scenarios in the future are not always the outcome. If we switch to a authentic Shen pattern of thinking, what then immediately happens is it shuts off the need to be looking into the future, to be stuck in the past, and we automatically become more present.
That's the automatic. So the practice is reconnecting yourself to the familiarity of coming back to your Shen, your truth, your honesty, your integrity. That takes practice because, as we've just said, we are surrounded by an environment that almost encourages to do the opposite. And we have to practice, and we'll talk about as how you practice. But once you do that, then over time, and it's different for everyone, but the practice has to continue, then your familiarity comes very natural to be more rooted or grounded in your Shen, in your authenticity, in what you believe and why you believe it. And then your journey of travel, your yi, your intention, becomes easier to follow.
So this practice of being mindfully present, over time, this becomes more habitual. Exactly. It becomes less clunky. You don't have to consciously be aware of your thought processes so much because you naturally start to default to your authenticity, to your Shen way of thinking rather than your inner child or a fearful ego way of thinking. So David, just to close, do you want to talk then about this Shen reconnection practice, this how we on a daily basis can reconnect to our authenticity?
So this is really important because there's no, especially in Taoism, there's no defined, you have to do this, you must do this, you've got to do it for this amount of time. What I want to encourage you is if this teaching resonates with you, and we all have had experiences of the inner child, but we've also had an experience of this spirituality, this inner knowing, this worth and value. For me, it's meditation. So when I talk about meditation, I don't mean having to practice sitting cross-legged for an hour in a quiet room watching a candle. I think meditation and the Taoist is the ability to focus the mind. I would say if you're new to trying meditation, no longer than 10, 15 minutes. And you can do it. You can sit quietly. You can go for a walk. You can walk your dog and meditate. If you're into crafts, as you're doing your crafts, you can meditate. If you like music, you can meditate And you can have that process, as we've been talking about, of just being in control and focusing the mind, getting used to saying, is this my emotion or is this my belief? And making that separation. Again, because I know you're going to write in and saying, I'm saying you shouldn't have emotions. I am not saying you should not have emotions. I am saying the opposite. Emotions are natural, normal, part of who we are. They make us human beings. But we shouldn't make these decisions on our emotions. We should make it from who we are, the essence of who we are, truthfully, honestly, what defines us, our principles. And so meditation helps you to sit down quietly. I would say you would have to do it once a day. This is my view. You may not do it once a day, but I would say if it's just starting 10, 15, 20 minutes, you sit down quietly, you go for a walk, you walk the dog. If you like cooking, you can meditate as you're cooking and just refocus on what your truth, honesty and integrity. And we've got a little model we call the Shen test. The Shen test. And the Shen test is what I'm saying to myself, the narrative I'm giving myself, would I give it to my 6-7-year-old child? Would I tell my child, look, sweetheart, daddy's going to give you some valuable information. You must always think of the worst case scenario. You must think of what's the worst thing that's going to happen to you, and you must work towards that. It'd be the last thing we would say. Then why are we saying it to ourselves? And we would give our child the ability to look at all scenarios. Yes, that could happen. Nothing wrong with that. But this could happen, and that could happen. And how do we follow our path in life? What would we say to our child? If your child come up to you and said, Mommy, Daddy, how do I plan my life? I'm sitting my GCEs. I've got a test at school. This could change my life forever. What would you say to them? And it just say the same to you. It's not complicated. There's nothing mysterious about this. What is the truth? And do you tell yourself that truth?
Wonderful. Thank you, David. And next week, tune in next Saturday because David is preparing a beautiful new guided meditation on how to live more mindfully in the now, which will complement this particular teaching. So do listen out for that. I'll also put a link in the show notes to our Shen, our Authentic Self video teaching playlist, as well as our full guided meditations teaching playlist. So both of those will help you enormously with this topic. I really hope you have enjoyed today's teaching. Please do let us know if you have struggled with this idea of being more present, more in the now. Let us know all about it and perhaps how you have dealt with it. We'd love to hear from you. And finally, David works one-to-one with clients all over the world on exactly this sort of topic every week by Zoom video call. I will put a link in the show notes to learn more about David's sessions. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We produce new long-form teachings every Saturday, as well as 2 midweek short snippets of wisdom for you to enjoy. So don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you again very soon. Bye-bye.